Hello students. In the previous lecture we started class 11th economics second chapter Indian economy 1950 to 1990. The chapter began with the explanation of the economic system that are seen around the world, and we discussed about how a capitalist economy, a socialist economy or a mixed economy would function. By seeing all these definitions, our goal is to find out what kind of an economic system was adapted by the Indian economy. We found that we as the people, as a social system, as an economic background were not comfortable with the pure forms of either capitalism or socialism. As a result, we accepted some forms of both the economic pattern, and we adopted a mixed economy, which is a compilation of both socialism and capitalism. That is, we have both the sectors which are entirely under the ownership of the government, as well as we have areas which are covered by the private industries. Now, in today's chapter, with the continuation, we start off that what were the plannings that were initiated by our policy makers and how these plannings were introduced. So, the first heading of our today's lecture is, what is a plan? A plan in economy would be defined as a pattern, a system through which we are able to use the resources of the country in the best possible manner. To start off the planning system in our country, we required to analyze first what were the resources that we owned, and secondly, how could we use them to their best possible manner. As a result, we firstly required to find out a specific time duration which was required to implement a plan. So we adopted the 5-year planning system, which was inspired by the former Soviet Union, who is supposed to be a pioneer in national building. Mostly, our plans were long-term plans and they were perspective plans. Perspective planning means that they were based on the provided ideologies that we could be able to achieve this much, at least this much within this span of time. As a result, the plannings were covered by a different set of goals, and a balance between those goals was the target, how we were able to manage the different goals that we set for the economic system. So, for this, the economic system was firstly introduced by the Planning Commission in the year 1950, and it was set up with the chairmanship of the Prime Minister, and we started off our first 5-year planning in the year 1951. The 5-year plannings in our country were initiated by the economic planners, and they were set with certain goals in their minds. The goals of the 5-year plans are growth, modernization, self-reliance, and equity. By growth, it is referred to usually as only the monetary development of the country, but it is not just limited to that. It comprises of an increase in the country's production, services, output, and different kind of economic areas which produce capital for the nation. It implies not just the large stock areas, but at the same time, the smaller sectors which add to their national income. It is a very wide zone if we have to analyze how much we have achieved in the growth zone. As a result, we need to set up some criterias how we analyze the growth of the nation. We in economics study this with the term called GDP, that is gross domestic product. Gross domestic product is the final value or the final market value of the goods and services which are produced in primary, secondary and tertiary sectors of the economy within 1 year. This rate of GDP is decided and analyzed to read how much the nation has grown from year to year, and it indicates the growth of the nation. The second goal set up by the policy makers was modernization. By this term, we usually refer to the introduction of new technology, new machineries, and reducing the use of human labor and adding on to more machineries. But our development was not just confined to just adding on the machineries and foreign technology. Our goal for modernization was much wider. By modernization in Indian perspective, it also involved allowing people to get education, allowing women to participate in the economy as equal to men, eradicating all the social evils that prevailed in the nation, and as a result, an involvement of every member of the society in an even manner. So to achieve a modern society, it required banks, factories, schools, technology, basic facilities, and these were our goals of modernization. If we were able to educate a child, he would have been a much more needed resource for the nation. If we were able to provide the farmer with some modern technology, the production increase that he would add to the country's GDP, that would be tremendous. So by modernization, our definition was way wider than what the rest of the world seeks. The third goal of the Indian 5-year planning was self-reliance. As we are all aware that India was once a colony of Britain, and for most of the resources we were dependent on the British mercy. If they were allowing us to have some resource, we would be able to get them. Otherwise, we were majorly dependent on their markets, their products, and they were controlling every aspect of our economy as well as our social system. Now, after the independence, our priority was to attain the goal of self-reliance, that is to make the economy so self-dependent that we are not uh, relying on nations for basic requirements like food and clothing and employment. So to achieve self-reliance, what was required is to acquire a growth in agriculture, industrial development, education, to generate our own domestic technology so that it reduces our dependence on the foreign market. And last but still, the most important goal that our policy makers were seeking was to establish equity within the economic system. We were already facing a difference in the social and economic spheres, that money was concentrated within a limited lot of people. Now, the economic planning was majorly working towards a distribution, an equal distribution of the benefits of the economic development, so that it can be extended to each and every section of the society, so that the poorest member could also get the benefits of the development that is attained by the nation. And every Indian should be able to meet their basic needs, and like food and decent housing and education and healthcare and employment and security of life. So the aim or the objective of all those motives, that is modernization, self-reliance, growth, everything was to be extended to the lowest member of the social system. So with these goals in mind, the planning makers of India attempted to achieve a full growth for the nation in the initial 7 5-year plans. We'll study the policies and developmental issues respective to the agriculture and industry in the next lecture.